Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started now. So first, we want to thank all the students who bravely volunteered to share their work up here today. After having gone through the workshop with our featured speaker, it's a hard thing to do, right? Especially when the work is so fresh. So just really want to do a small round of applause to them. All right. All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Matthew Rojas, and I'm a professor in the Department of Chicano and Latino Studies, and I'm one of the event's organizers. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment to share a bit of the history surrounding our annual event, as well as thank many of the individuals and organizations who've made it possible. While the Helena María Viramontes annual lecture in Latina and Latino literature was founded in 2015, its true origin comes from a shared passion among a small group of us who, as scholars of Chicana and Chicano and Latino literature here at CSULB, wanted to bring more fully to life the power of the works we so admired for our students. We also wanted to publicly honor authors whose writing speaks to integral issues that daily impact our communities. And lastly, we wanted to see CSULB become a leader in celebrating the field of Chicana and Chicano and Latino literature and scholarship. So in spring 2015, we got to see our passions realized with the commemoration of the work of Los Angeles native and distinguished Cornell University professor Helena María Viramontes, one of the most important Chicana writers of the post-1960s Chicano movement generation. Indeed, the significance of Viramontes' place within the field of Chicana and Chicano literary studies led us to name our event after her. And following the success of that wonderful evening in 2015, we were able to develop the lecture into an annual event. In 2016, we hosted Chicano writer Manuel Munoz, and last year we welcomed Puerto Rican poet and performance artist Urayan Noel. Now, in its fourth year, the annual lecture has garnered widespread event and support on campus and in the broader Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Orange County communities that CSU Long Beach serves. Throughout it all, our mission and format remains the same. The lecture series is dedicated to the creation of a public space for community members, faculty, staff, and students to engage with Latino literature and the writers who produce it. The event entails a public reception, a book signing, a student writing workshop with the author, and a public performance by renowned Latino writers, poets, and scholars in the humanities. It creates a special opportunity to discuss and participate in a collective dialogue on the issues and themes most relevant to the study and practice of Latino arts and the humanities. The event's success is due to the sustained support it has received, as well as the individual efforts of our committee members who seek out funding every year. This year, we are proud to see the Helena María Viramontes lecture made possible with the support from California Humanities, a nonprofit partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. In addition, we are grateful to campus sponsors, which include CLA Scholarly Intersections, the CSULB Office of the President, the CSULB University Library, Spanish Graduation Student Association, Chicano Latino Studies Student Association, CHILLS for short, right? The Associated Students, Inc., and the following CSULB departments: Chicano and Latino Studies, English, Romance, German, Russian languages and literatures, and the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. We also owe much to the following individuals: Executive Director of the Arts Council of Long Beach, Griselda Suarez, who initiated our contact with our featured writer tonight; Chilsa Treasurer and beloved student, Celeste Luna, who advocated for our event at numerous university committees and meetings; and department coordinators Michelle Seals and Lisa Bernhardt, who are from the Departments of Chicano Latino Studies and from English, respectively. And quite honestly, who are the administrative backbone of the entire event. Without them, none of the paperwork, which is necessary, would have gotten done to actually put this event in place. And last but not least, I would also like to publicly acknowledge our committee members who generously volunteer their time and energy to this project year-round. So even though you get to see this final event in April, we start basically planning for next year in a few weeks. So it takes a lot, and it's not necessarily anything that is rewarded other than, as we mentioned, with our passions getting to be realized. So if I can ask the committee members to stand for just a moment in recognition. We have Doctors Jeanette Acevedo Rivera, Aracelis Girmay, Dennis Lopez, Ana Sandoval, who is unable to be with us here today, but is a founding member, and I would argue very much the emotional backbone of this group. So if we can give her applause as well. And Renee Trevino, there in the back. Thank you to everyone. Really, we count on you so much, and we hope that we can grow our committee. Oh my goodness. The other backbone, and we have many, apparently, Kiki Shaver, who started off as one of the students who really had that passion instilled in her. Now I feel like I have to say more about you, Kiki, because you deserve every bit of it. She is a student who's homegrown as an undergraduate student here, and then a master's student. She's along the way gathered a great deal of fellowships and scholarships, and more importantly than anything, mentored students now in her new role as an instructor, and really I think is in so much like, you know, the essence of this entire group. So I apologize. I think you're just so integral that you know you're always in my thoughts. So, but anyway, thank you, Kiki. With that, I want to go ahead and then turn the podium over to Dr. Esparza, who will be actually giving our introductory remarks about our speaker tonight. So, thank you.
Good evening. Maythi, thank you for your introduction, and thank you all for joining us tonight. It is a distinct honor to introduce tonight's speaker, Aracelis Girmay. I think it fitting that our guest is an author that matches the political urgency, beauty, and skill with which Helena María Viramontes writes. Like Viramontes, Girmay insists on affirming the humanity and lives of those who confront and endure the systemic brutality of colonial, racist, and heteropatriarchal violence. To capture the admiration that I have for tonight's speaker, I will share that two of my students called me a fangirl when we were discussing her poetry earlier this semester, and I don't think they were mistaken. Upon reading Girmay's poetry, I felt a deep appreciation for each of her collections, which include The Black Maria, published in 2016, Kingdom on Amalia, published in 2011, and Teeth, published in 2007. Girmay also published a collage-based picture book named Changing in 2005. She has garnered critical acclaim and has been conferred numerous literary awards and national fellowships, including the Whiting Award for Poetry, the Isabella Gardner Poetry Award, the National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship, and a Kavikanan Fellowship. She earned her MFA at New York University and currently teaches creative writing at Sarah Lawrence College. Aracelis Girmay has a gift when it comes to using language to express the intense desire for freedom from violence experienced by African diasporic people around the world. Her poetry is at once deeply inspired by her own biography as the daughter of a mother who is African American and Puerto Rican, and a father who is Eritrean. And it is also profoundly invested in making connections between the logics used to legitimize violence against people beyond her own communities of origin. Bridging these genealogies, in her poetry, she envisions a world in which Black boys and Black men are not shot down by the very state agents that are sworn to protect them, where Black women don't have to fear the world that their unborn Black children will be born into. A world where Eritrean people and other refugees don't have to subject themselves to the possibility of drowning at sea as they flee the violence of dictatorship and widespread political violence that is rooted in histories of European colonialism. Girmay's close attention to language leads the reader to acknowledge that what she represents speaks to how the past lives in the present as well as the pervasiveness of violence in the lives of brown and black people. She powerfully captures the structural and routinized violence experienced by people of color in and outside the US. Yet she masterfully avoids perpetrating or re-inflicting the very violence that she calls into question in her poetry. As she reminds her readers, she is invested in asking, quote, how do I work inside such histories of violence without further brutalizing the Black body in the work? How do I, especially here, make critical space for joy and tenderness in the remembering, so that my own imagination, gesture by gesture, line by line, isn't rendered by the values of white supremacy or violence as I resist it. And so she teaches us, she implores us all to recall that the lives she represents are about more than the violence that structures them. Girmay offers a vision of a world where the living can do more than stay alive, do more than simply survive. Her poetry is emotionally wrenching, but at the same time, it brims with the joy of the lives that she celebrates in her work. For instance, joyfulness and humor abound in the lines of first Stephanie Lora, third grade, who made me a card. In this poem, Girmay engages in a delightful contemplation of a card that her third grade student, Stephanie, made for her at the end of the school year. She playfully and thoughtfully concludes that the assembly of letters that Stephanie includes in her card, which at first prove unreadable, proclaim love is for everybody. And in this way, Girmay reminds us that we must read that which we don't understand with generosity in order to recognize the profound knowledge can be found in unexpected places and far too often overlooked and unrecognized places. This reminder that love is for everybody is one of the most urgent messages that Girmay's work delivers. Throughout the day, it has become evident that Girmay herself lives through an ethics of love that is undeniable. And I am overjoyed that we will be gifted with the brilliance, power, and kindness of her words this evening. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Aracelis Girmay.
Wow, thank you so much. I just, how can I read after that? Man, it's such an honor. Can you hear me okay? If at any point you can't just, it's such an honor to get to be here. Wow, like home in a way. Thank you for everybody who had anything to do with bringing me here. I especially want to say the names again. I'll just say the first names of the committee members. Anna, Araceli, Dennis, Kiki, Renee, Jeanette, Mithi, thank you. Thanks to all of you. I now have two young people, almost 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. And it's amazing how much it takes to just get out of the house. And so I want to say to you, like, thank you to all of the tiny and big things that you made happen to be here tonight. It's remarkable. When I first was invited to participate in this amazing event and gathering, I thought, oh God, are you sure? Like, I didn't say that, but I thought that. And I just want to say the names of some of the people I walk beside and after as a way to just honoring people who have done and are doing such tremendous work. Yesenia Montilla, Naomi Ayala, Julia de Burgos, Gloria Ansaldúa, Claribel Alegría, Cherry Moraga, Sandra Maria Esteves, Elizabeth Acevedo, Ruth Irupe Sanabria, Vanessa Angelica Villarreal, Lori Ann Guerrero, Natalie Diaz, Denise Froman. So I thought I would start by sharing a piece of a work of art and imagination and resistance that continues to teach me deeply about the imagination and what a poem might be, even though this is not thought of as a poem by most people. And so I wanted to share it. Some of you might know it. If you know the people who made it, let me know. Oh, to the people who brought the little one, that's the biggest blessing. Thanks, thank you. Yeah, and I wanted to show this. It's about a 7-minute video, and then after maybe towards the end of it, I might start reading this little prose piece in response, and then I'm going to read some poems, and then there will be a Q&A. It's Rest in Peace, Oscar Grant by the dance crew, Turf Fiends from the Bay, and Yak Films is the collective that filmed it. I'll say this, I begin with that which is languageless, gesture, wordless calls of grief or joy, exclamation, a dancer's body moving in time. What John Edgar Weideman calls in his essay In Praise of Silence, the entire body's expressive repertoire, subversive, liberating, freighted with laughter, song, and sigh, burdened and energized by opposition, end quote. Which means not words alone, but every mark we make in the landscape, in the air. I begin here because when I think about the art and resistance work I am most enlivened and taught by this moment and for the past few years, I think about the Turf Fiends and Yak Films. I have not been so moved by nearly any quiet work of both art and resistance. My friend Roske urged me to see R.I.P. Oscar Grant, which we're going to see. By the Turf Fiends, just a little background, Oscar Julius Grant III lived in Hayward, California. He was a grandson, a son, a father, a partner. Grant was born February 27, 1986, and was fatally shot by Johannes Muserl, a BART transit policeman in Oakland on New Year's morning, the morning after his mother's birthday in 2009. R.I.P. Oscar Grant shows the dance crew dancing in Fruitvale Station, the BART station where Grant was shot. It's important to mention here that Oakland's Fruitvale district has roots in organizing against white supremacy and police brutality with, among other activist groups, the Oakland Latinos United for Justice. Latinos United for Justice was formed in response to the 1968 shooting of Charles Pinky Dominic de Baca by Officer Walter Gibbons. It was around this time that the Chicano Revolutionary Party joined forces with the Black Panthers to help patrol the streets and protect citizens from police.
The protest is now planned in response to the leaders getting deadly officer shooting. Stop and one reporter said video obtained exclusively by KTVU shows the actual shooting as may not be seen under some views. KTVU is calling
I see the work of these dancers as an extension of that same vision of the folks who organized for Oakland Latinos United for Justice and the Black Panthers and the Chicano Revolutionary Party. And here I wanted to think about the ways that young Black and brown people are memorializing and celebrating each other while resisting brutality. The crew's dance moves and gestures look to me to be informed, among other things, by technology, animation, video. They rewind, fast forward, slow down time. The news clippings up against the surveillance-like manning of the camera make me think, look at these young men remixing movement to repurpose the technology that was not at first meant to love them. And they dance in a place where a brutal tragedy has happened, where the crime of the Fugitive Slave Act, for example, is echoed in other kinds of government-sanctioned violence against brown and Black bodies. We hear these names among the thousands: Charles Pinky Dominic de Vaca, Sean Bell, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Tarika Wilson, Mike Brown, Oscar Grant. In Fruitvale Station, these dancers move and dance in Grant's footsteps. If we are to try to imagine that time is an illusion, all things happening at once, it is moving for me to imagine that as Oscar Grant is in the throes of harassment and the pain of his murder and saying goodbye, there is this company, these young men alongside him and over him and under him and near him, a kind of company to him. And in this they are remembering, companioning, and tending to the dead and the future too. I once heard Joy Harjo speak on a panel about history and poetry. She sat quietly for much of it. The other panelists said a lot of things. Harjo remained the only quiet one. Her quiet had a straight back. And then she interrupted one of the panelists and said something like, "That reminds me of the time." And she spoke of a fellow Native American professor who committed suicide near the end of one of the years, and how he must have been hurting and isolated, but not many people spoke about that, or spoke about his death or their loss when he died. And she said she was at home one day, and she noticed a black thread or string floating in the window, and she observed it for a while until she realized that that black string was grief. The grief of the professor, the grief of the students, her own grief, the grief of silence, a historical grief, and that she knew that it was her job to take that thread and put it somewhere, weave it into the larger tapestry. And she made a gesture above her head as though she was like tucking it in. And she said, if she didn't do that, put that grief in its place, someone else might be out walking and just walk right into it without knowing what it was they'd walked into and inherited, the danger of that. Let me make sure this is... And that's all I remember from all of the things that were said that day. So this tending that they're doing is part of the work I think such makers, as the folks whose names I listed, are involved in. This is the tending of other poets like June Jordan and Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde's name keeps coming up today. And these dancers help me to ask of arts practices and how many people make things, whether it's like texts, knitting, like how many of you are artists, writers? That's a lot of people. Look. Yeah. So this may or may not be useful to you, but I know for me it has been useful to ask these questions. A couple of them you heard Araceli say already, but who or what does this work care for and love? That, like, as a revision, like revision's not only like a question, right, of the diction that one is using or the syntax but who or what does the work love or care for? How do you talk about look at white supremacy and patriarchy and ... without further brutalizing the Black or female or trans or ... body in the work? 3, make a list of the bodies in your work and the verbs attributed to each. When we are writing, filming, painting, what verbs do we attribute to each body according to race, class, gender, etc.? What does this tell us about our eyes? Earlier in the workshop today, Annie, I hope it's okay, Annie mentioned the calendar, and the calendar could eat things. And I was saying how how important it is to imagine and remember like who or what we think has agency or appetite or um, desire. For what are our tendencies, and where might we need to make critical space for joy and tenderness in the remembering, which is not my strong suit, so that our own imaginations, gesture by gesture, line by line, aren't rendered by the values we mean to oppose or resist. So these are the questions that I have been carrying into was carrying into my most recent book, but they're the questions I also have struggled with for many years. I'm going to read some poems. For Stephanie Lora, 3rd grade, who made me a card. PS 132, Washington Heights, which is in New York. There's a public school numbers. Elephant on an orange line underneath a yellow circle, meaning sun. 6 green vertical lines with color all from the top, meaning flowers. The first time I peel back the 5 squares of Scotch tape, unfold the crooked crease fold of art class paper, I am in my living room. It is June. Inside of the card, there is one long word, and then Estefani's name. Los Ruri, Estefani Lora. Los Ruri, Los Ruri, the scientific Latin way of saying hibiscus. Los Ruri. A direction is in, are you going north, south, east, west, Los Ruri? I try over and over to read the word out loud. Los Ruri, Luis Ruri, Los Ruri, Los Ruri. What is this word? I imagine using it in sentences like, man, I have to go back to the house. I forgot my Los Ruri. Or, there's nothing better than rain, hot rain, open windows with music, and a tall glass of Los Ruri. Or, how are we getting to Pittsburgh? Should we drive or take the Los Ruri? I have lived 4 minutes with this word, not knowing what it means. It is the end of the year. I consider writing my student Estefani Lora a letter that goes, to the brilliant Estefani Lora. Hola, querida. I hope that you are well. I've just opened the card that you made me, and it is beautiful. I really love the way you filled the sky with birds. I believe that you are chula, chulita, and super fly. Yes, the card is beautiful. I only have one question for you. What does the word Los Ruri mean? I try the word again. Los Ruri, Los Ruri, Los Ruri. I try the word in Spanish. Lo isferibari, lo isferibari. And then slowly lo ispo eribari. Lo ispo eribari. Love is for everybody. Love is for everybody. Love, 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 everybody. Love is love, everybody. Everybody is love. Love, love for everybody. For love is everybody. Love is for everybody. Love, love, love for body. Love, body, body is love. Love is body. Everybody is love. Is every love? For every love is love. For love, everybody. Love, 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 love for everybody. Love is for everybody. Thank you. I want to say, because I've had a chance to meet people today, that was a poem that I thought would never translate. Like, I wanted to record to myself and to try to write this ode to her, and I thought, oh, I like wrote it, was working on it, and just put it away. And then it was like these series of workshops that you have to have like one a day of something new, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll just go back in and work on it some more and share it. But I thought this will never work. And now it feels like one of the most special things I have to offer. So that's just an interesting thing, right? The thing you think no might be the flowers you hold. I'm gonna jumping around. It is estimated that over 20,000 people have died at sea, making the journey from North Africa to Europe in the past 2 decades. On October 3rd, 2013, it is estimated that 300 people died at sea off the coast of Lampedusa, Italy. Those on board the boat that sank were nearly all Eritrean. This cycle of poems focuses on Eritrean history, as this is a history I am somewhat familiar with as someone of its diaspora, but of course, the history of people searching for political asylum and opportunity, both, is much larger than Eritrean history alone. Prayer and letter to the dead. The typewriter hammers out the end of its ribbon as you, one by one, go and go and go, outlasted by memory, by ink, the patience of the paper, where the dark words buck like fish in air. I, the living, which is my portrait, the right hand bleeding the page for its marrow marks, or the silence my left hand inherits. Beloveds, beneath the surface of your last place, the tiny oblivious fishes form wreaths above the sea grasses and their long reach. Some mornings in my own city far away, I run to greet you, come to me as sea, and carry myself out into your long dark time like a child meeting its older cousins. I touch your teeth and give you the single word of my body. I am a woman again at the side of Aboy Haile's bed. Aboy, who is 96, he is brushing my acacia hair. He is holding my arm. He says, moving his hand to mean all around us, that this is my home. He means Adisogdo, but he also means the world. Though I think in America that I am there and he is here, that we are different or far, really we are each other. My bones are your bones, he says. His teeth are my teeth, and my smiling is his smiling. He holds my arm tight until it is a stone, a bone. He smooths my hair with force. I am a horse. The long, dark skin of the water, the talking aboy of the water, the brushing back my acacia hair, washing my face. When we are done, I cross the sea back into air and return to the traffic of the streets I know. I am marked by the dead, your sea letters of salt and weeping. Now I am ready to lay myself down on the earth, to listen to the instructions for how to talk of love and land, to sing of home in the horrible years, and to fill my language like the stars do, with the light, anyway, of a future tense. So my most recent book is the Black Maria, really thinking about misidentification, and the Maria is a plural of mare, any of several mostly flat, dark areas on the surface of the moon or Mars. Though mare means sea in Latin, they lack water. Astronomers thought that those lunar features were seas when they first saw them through telescopes, and they were referred to as the Black Maria, the Black Seas. Basins and craters misidentified as seas. And so I'm thinking a lot about misidentification and the imagination and how it fails us and the consequences of it, and trying to imagine other possibilities simultaneously. Um, the Black Maria. Black the raven, black the dapples on the moon and horses, black sleep of night and the night's idea, black the piano, white its teeth but black its gums and mind with which we serenade the Black Maria. And the night, wearing its special silver, serenades us too, with metaphors for how the body makes semen stars, egg moon. 1600s, European ships have heaved fatly with the weight of black grief, black flesh, black people across the sea. The astronomers think the moon's dark marks are also seas and call them the Black Maria. Meanwhile, the Italian Riccioli naming the seas according to his language and sensibilities. Riccioli naming the dark fur of the moon Mare Cognitum, Mare Crisium, Mare Fecunditatis, sea that has become known, sea of crises, sea of fertility. Those are the names of the seas on the moon, by like according to him, but they've been preserved throughout history. If it is up to Riccioli, then these are the names of 3 of the Black Maria. So I feel like it could be a project to rename or not name those darknesses. Like we should do something. I'm serious. I'm like, maybe I can like put a site up and invite people to do something. Okay. Since I'm so technologically savvy. I call the sea Mar, I call the sea Bahri, I call the moon Luna, but far is my word for both you and the moon. I heard a story once of a woman in the Sahara who for years carried a single page of Anna Karenina that she read over and over, the long combers of print repeating like the waves of the Black Maria. Language is something like this, a hard studying of cells under a microscope, cells on their way to becoming other things, a person, a book, a moon. Above the bowl, I crack the egg of this idea, yolk from clear, which is it, which is not it? Does moon name the whole thing, or just the side we know, the side made dark with the Black Maria? How language is an asha tree, a fool that grows everywhere, a snake shedding its skin, a bowl of teeth, a kitchen plate of shadow and ruins, like the moon. Moon says, please God, crowd my loneliness with stars, but the star's life is short compared to moon's. There is always a funeral. Moon is always wearing the veil of the Black Maria. However pretty the sound, it was a misidentification to name the basalt basins and craters the Black Maria of the moon. If this is a poem about misseeing, Renisha McBride, Trayvon Martin, Rakia Boyd, then these are also 3 of the names of the Black Maria. Naming, however kind, is always an act of estrangement, to put into language that which can't be put. And someone who does not love you cannot name you right, and even moon can't carry the moon. If this is a poem about estrangement and waters made dark with millions of names and bodies, the Atlantic Ocean, the Mediterranean and Caribbean seas, the Mississippi, then these are also the names of the Black Maria. For days, the beautiful child Emmett swells into Tallahatchie, Even now, the moon paints its face with emmets in petition. Open casket of the night, somebody's child, our much more than the moon. Neil deGrasse Tyson, does anybody know? He's done a lot to help to popularize science. He has a radio talk, what is it called? Radio Star Talk Live. Black astrophysicist and director of the Hayden Planetarium, born in 1958, New York City. In his youth, deGrasse Tyson was confronted by police on more than one occasion when he was on his way to study the stars. I know his family has roots in the South and Puerto Rico, and then I don't know the other roots. Body of space, body of dark, body of light. The Skyview Apartments circa 1973. A boy is kneeling on the rooftop. A boy who, it is important to mention here, his skin is brown, prepares his telescope, the weights and rods to better see the moon. His neighbor, it is important to mention here that she is white, calls the police because she suspects the brown boy of something, she does not know what at first, then turns with her looking, his telescope into a gun, his duffel into a bag of objects thieved from the neighbors' houses, maybe even hers. And the police, it is important to mention that statistically they are also white, arrive to find the boy who has been turned by now into the suspect on the roof with a long black lens, which is in the neighbor's mind a weapon. And depending on who you are, reading this, listening to this, you know that the boy is in grave danger. And you might have known somewhere quiet in your gut, you might have worried for him in the white space between lines 5 and 6, or maybe even earlier. And you might be holding your breath for him right now because you know this story. It's a true story, though miraculously in this version of the story anyway, the boy on the roof of the Skyview lives to tell the police that he is studying the night and moon, and lives long enough to offer them the cops a view through his telescope's long black eye, which, if I am spelling it out anyway, is the instrument he borrowed and the beautiful trouble he went through, lugging it up to the roof to better see the leopard body of space speckled with stars and the moon far off, much farther than, since I am spelling the thing out. The distance between the white neighbor who cannot see the boy who is her neighbor, who in fact is much nearer to her than to the moon, the boy who wants to understand the large and gloriously unhuman mysteries of the galaxy, the boy who, despite America, has not been killed by the murderous jury of his neighbor's imagination and wound. This poem wants only the moon in its hair and the boy on the roof. This boy on the roof of this poem with a moon in his heart. Inside my own body as I write this poem, my body is making a boy, even as the radio calls out the Missouri coroner's news, the Ohio coroner's news. 2015, my boy will nod for his milk and close his mouth around the black eye of my nipple. We will survive. How did it happen? The boy, the cops, my body in this poem, my milk pulling down into droplets of light as the baby drinks and drinks them down into the body that is his own. See it, splayed and sighing as a star in my arms. Maybe he will be the boy who studies stars. Maybe he will be, say it, the boy on the coroner's table, splayed and spangled by an officer's lead, as if he too weren't made of a trillion glorious cells and sentences trying to last. Leadless, remember the body's beginning, splendored with breaths, turned by time into at least this song, this moment made and the mackerel soul caught flashing inside the brief moment of the body's net, then whoosh back into the sea of space. The poem dreams of bodies always leadless, bearing only things ordinary as water and light. This Thank you. I never want to read that poem, but it feels there was a shooting in my neighborhood last week by a cop who killed Sahid Basil, and by cops, and they just like eyewitnesses say, I think it happened in 8 seconds from the time they pulled up in an unidentified car to the time he was on the ground. And some people say like after being shot, he was handcuffed, and people, the eyewitness accounts, people say that they didn't hear a thing, like just like fire. I never want to read that poem, but I feel like that's the poem that I should share, one of them, and like just the realization that like we're not special. Like we're special to the people who love us, but like I don't deserve. Like Gwendolyn Brooks says, those people. She's talking about South Africa apartheid, and she's imagining that she's speaking through this persona of this little boy who she names the near Johannesburg boy, and he's describing the white Afrikaners benefiting from the apartheid system. And the boy in her poem says, those people visiting the world as I visit the world. Like, no one's more or less a visitor, right? Like that. This is section 8 of that piece I just read, thinking about like what it takes to get here, and be a being at all, and birth. How did it happen? The boy, the cops, my body in this poem, the body bearing something ordinary as light, opens, as in a room somewhere, the friend opens in poppy in flame, burns and bears the child out. When I did, it was the hours and hours of breaking, the bucking of it all, the push and head not moving not an inch until, when he flew from me, it was the night who came flying through me with all its hair, the immense terror of his face and noise. I heard the stranger, and my brain, without looking, vowed a love him vow. His struggling merely to be, split me down with the axe, two. How true the thinness of our hovering between the realms of here, not here. The fight first to open, then to breathe, and then to close. Each of us entering the world, and entering the world like this, soft, unlikely, then the idiosyncratic minds and verbs. Beloveds, making your ways to and away from us always across the centuries, inside the vastness of the galaxy, how improbable it is that this iteration of you or me might come to be at all. Body of fear, body of laughing, and even last a second. This fact should make us fall all to our knees with awe, the beauty of it against these odds, the stacks and stacks of near misses and slimmest chances that birthed one ancestor into the next and next. Profound, unspeakable cruelty, who counters this, who does not see, and so to tenderness I add my action. And I'm going to read one more poem to close. But I wanted to say I'm going to leave a notebook here if anybody wants to sign up for like some, I don't know, collaborative something of like reimagining names for those dark parts of the sea, or not imagining but somehow saying something, taking away what we've imagined. Then add your email to the notebook I put up there. To close, it's a tiny poem. It's called Ars Poetica. May the poems be the little snail's trail. Everywhere I go, every inch quiet record of the foot's silver prayer. I lived once. Thank you. It was here. Thank you, guys.
Okay, one more round of applause, please, to show our great appreciation. I will say before we get started that if you were given a survey and you filled that out, please return it to one of the tables up front. And also that Aracelis has been so gracious as to offer book signing following the Q&A, so the opportunity to get the book signed by the lobby after we conclude. I'll give it a few beats for people that perhaps need to go, and then we'll get started. And I might as well ask the first question so I can take some time to walk over there. Hand up high if you have a question, comment, a complaint even. If not, oh, here we go. Okay. Loud and clear.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to hear you talk more about. There's this really good article by I think the pronounce her last name wrong, but Jenny Zhang or Zhang.
I don't know how to say it. Is it XIE? No. Oh, ENG.
Yeah.
Yes.
She wrote an article that came out, let's see, like maybe a couple years ago about writers of color and the narratives that they produce in America and how sort of what is like what like how writers of color, their traumas and narratives are marketed, and that marketability, like what that means. And there's a really good kind of question, rhetorical question that she poses. It says, like, where are my like carefree writers of color at? Seriously, where? And so when I hear you talk about resisting without further brutalizing bodies that the work is caring for or advocating for, I just kind of like wanted to hear you talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this in different ways today, but I think it's so critical, important that we're all coming in with all of our languages, like people who are making things or writing or writers, that like the different registers and the different ways of speaking and thinking, and that we use and have access to all of them. And I think, what do I want to say? I love that. I haven't read it, but I love that she's asking the question. I also think, like, if it's my deep need, desire, like, I can't, this is the work that I must write about and be thinking about. And so it feels important to me to be, if something is calling you, to be thinking about ways in if you're thinking about history or historical narratives, to be thinking like, how do I not abandon that work because I feel afraid that it's only adding sorrow, but how in the work do I, like, how can I open up places for a different narrative or a different way of telling, or like more or different dimension or in the saying. So there's something, I just feel like it's so important to have. I love that question, and it feels useful and meaningful to me. And I also say, like, don't abandon what's like leading you, and hope, and that changes over the years. And then I think like the piece about like consumption and capital, and that's a really difficult one. It's for me, I should say. I it's a it's interesting. I was joking with a visual artist a couple of weeks ago about how poetry, you don't really make money. Most people don't make money off of poetry. Um, most people, and so there's something that feels like differently freeing about that. At the same time, we talked about this earlier in the workshop that I visited, like appetite and audiences or institutions' appetite for like certain stories. I just think vigilance, like thinking about that, having conversations, figuring out ways to, if you to figure out where then you put your money if you're making money. Like, how do you put it back into a place that you feel like like you want it to go, using some of what you had to build something else. And I feel like there's a lot of young people who are younger than me, and I said this earlier, who are just imaginative and brilliant and making all kinds of spaces to like collectively honor each other's voices and change like who the tastemakers are and who the like the people who say like yes you and you, like people are like, okay, fine, take your fancy thing or take it. Like there's a lot more. There's such resistance and imagining of like, new spaces that I think people are engaged in. So I don't know. It's a tricky. It's tricky. I don't have an answer. Do you have an answer or a thought?
Hi.
Oh.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I assigned the Black Maria to both my classes, my workshop and my literature class, and I want to say for one that I think both these classes did a remarkable job of the book, of trying of finding their way in, and I think the book is very beautiful. So thank you for that. It was interesting to me because my writers seem to find more points of access and inspiration from the poems dealing with the sea. And my literature students seem to find more points of inspiration and more points of kind of entry in the latter half of the book, which I found very interesting. I wanted to ask about the nuance, which I'm probably saying wrong, so I'm sorry. And because I found the book in conversation with so many of the writers I've read, which I loved, that I had to actually have to leave the book and pick other poems and then re-enter. And I thought the connection between the flies and the angels that I think you had pointed out at some point in one of the notes. And the note sent me to Rilke, to Elegies. And I found myself thinking of Rilke's angels and the line in one of the Stephen Mitchell translations, fling the emptiness out of your arms. And I thought so much how this book seemed both much pain, but also celebratory in some sense, and also with joy. And I was sort of wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. Sorry, that question was endless. Sorry.
No, thank you. It sends me back to Rilke. Celebratory and what was the first word you used before that? Painful. Mhm. Thank you. I'm trying to think of what I would say. Maybe I'll come back because I feel like that's I'll come back to see what I might say. Unless you could say more about what you're wondering. Okay. Yeah, no. I'm thinking about it. Yeah.
Okay. So
Oh,
I have
hi.
a question about well, I guess the writing process, but it is like a simple question. I'm wondering, well, not really simple, but I'm wondering, what do you feel like at the beginning stage of your writing, there are certain things that are hindering you, like your pieces, like not writer's block per se, but like just overthinking certain lines or like just feeling like it wouldn't work because it's just crossing a certain line. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm wondering if like, anything hinders you from your creative process, essentially. And also, I want to know, like, do you write every day? That's a two-part question, I guess. Do you like, do you write every day or like just like here and there?
I would like to, but I find that I've always found it really difficult. Like I have always had a pretty intense like work or in school or work school situation, um, and um, and now have these two young people, and I'm working not like crazy, but like requires a lot of like thinking about what other people are making and writing. Um, so I've always been really scrappy and like literally like I'm remembering this one job I had in anthropology, and this is not a commercial or an advertising, but like we were, like retail, you're on the floor a lot, you're folding, you're doing other stuff, and I would like go to the what is it called, the cash register, and like just like make the the paper long, and then just like write scraps and put them in my pockets, or like other people do that. See, and there's something about like the scrap, which I didn't mean to do this, but like then you end up with these pieces that are like fragments, and like Anne Carson talks about like her translation work, and like just you got these fragments and they fall out this way and you can rearrange them this way, but there's something that like then by happy accident you've got these pieces with friction between them that don't really fit together, and that feels like that's part of my work and poetics, but I didn't, it just kind of, I stumbled upon it out of like life necessity. And I still like in the morning I'm taking notes, and now I have my iPhone, which I thought I'd never use the notes for. I'm like breastfeeding and taking notes like that, and then you've just got these stray pieces that I like open up and push against. But I never, for me, writing is I never know what I'm writing about. And I said this earlier, like there will be a line that you hear, and then I just will start to ask a question. Like I don't know where the line comes from, but one line like sister was the wolf, and then I'm like, who is the speaker? If sister was the wolf, what is the speaker? And you slowly just kind of like intuitively and with association and sound start to like generate something. It all feels really mysterious for me. And so the writer's block is really a block of time, and also it's not, I don't have writer's block. I just have like time trouble, time block. And then also I'm willing to write a lot of horrible like things, like a lot of trash that I keep and hang on to. And sometimes the thing I thought was trash, there will be a word that you pull and you Borges says that somehow, right? Like like if you have writer's block. This is not true for everybody. Sometimes there's like an emotional or like blockage, right? But Borges says you have to be willing to write like, really shitty things. So that's like my struggle is a time struggle. Yeah. Does that answer both parts? Yeah.
My question kind of relates to the moments in the Black Mirror where you reflect on your kind of role as a mother and what that means to you in your identity. So I was just wondering what ways do the process of mothering and the process of writing intersect for you, and how your identities of poet and mother interact and influence one another.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is going back to the pain and celebration, or the celebratory and painful. I think so. I've recently been revisiting Paul Celan's work, who especially the later work, and I highly recommend his work. I think he's just again that mystery, deeply mysterious, beautiful. I only know him in translation from the German into English and French into English, but I've been thinking about how this is a tiny thing, but like when we say things that like the history of the air changes, like, do you know what I mean? Like to say like yes, or go on, go. Like that's such a somehow that gives me that feels like a spell or like some kind of it doesn't change the world, but it feels like it like to like whisper a thing to somebody who like a baby who doesn't understand, but it's like washing over her somehow. And I find myself saying these things to them and thinking like even like when I'm gone you won't remember this, but this will have gone through you in some way. And I feel like there's like this feeling of like there must be, it can't all just be this. Like I think it's my tendency, not in life, but in my work, like in my quietest moments, I tend to like, I don't know, fall kind of heavy in the work. And I think in life I laugh really easily and love jokes, and but there's something I don't know why, but I'm like I like there's a I just fall heavy, and there's this I'm trying to like, and what else that feels connected, not utterly part of being a mom, but connected. And also just weirdness. Like I feel like I don't know what I'm gonna say. Like we were talking about like I'm like up all night. I'm like I just feel differently like stretched and porous. And I hear a lot of people say like like I can't get things done. I can't, which is true. But I feel like there's something probably really beautiful about that. That really deepens and helps my work along. As in everything, like all the ways we change, but I feel like differently spacious, porous, strange to myself. Which for some people that can be a hard thing for all the different reasons, but for me it feels like a beautiful thing to kind of be like, oh. Yeah.
Hi. This is also kind of be a long question. So there's this sort of kinship and bond that people of color from different walks of life have when reading about people of color history, whether it's our own, and whether it's brutalization or resilience of our ancestors. Reading about Black Maria, I felt this bond even though I am unfamiliar with literary history. With this being said, in this collection, water becomes a very symbolic entity, at times a comfort and a friend, and at other times a strangeness. You even call it our legacy. With that said, how did the sea become such a strong but also tender presence? And I think that goes back to Patty's question about painful but celebratory in your writing.
Mm-hmm. How did the sea become? I'm thinking of the poet Joshua Bennett, who has a beautiful book out called The Sobbing School. Does anybody know his work? It's really tremendous. Yes, yes. And I'm thinking about how, like, there's a poem, I'm forgetting the title. If you know it, tell me. Where he's talking about, like, the sea and how, does he say for Black people or people of color? It might be people of color, that the sea is always holding these histories of catastrophe. And I'm thinking about, like, Kamau Brathwaite, Caribbean writer, who, like, this is the sea carries many things, among them catastrophe, always, like, behaving, happening. I can't help, like, you know, you think, depending on where I am, like, when I'm on the Atlantic side or in the Caribbean, I'm, like, thinking about, like, the question, like, how did people get here? Who was here already? What happened? Who was displaced? So I just feel like the fact of the sea, like, always, if it's a sea with, like, that you can, sometimes the sea feels very still, but when it's still, I'm like, oh, what's under, like, what is that tight mouth, like, what is that? And then when it's moving, it feels like such an active presence, even when it's still. And you think about, like, the ways that we are connected through seas and what's on the other side. And I think from the moment I, like, started hearing stories of people's roots, ROUTES, then the sea was always full of us, right? Like, I think it's just history. I'm not, so it wasn't like an active trying to see. It's just, like, always, since I was young, like, that's been part of, like, that's the ancestors, part of my ancestry. I feel like I didn't respond as fully as
Oh yes, just like I said, I personally believe in the fact that you use your literature to expose police brutality. So I think the painful story that needs to be told. But with that being said, I'd like to know, do people some will misconstrue your work for being somewhat anti-police?
I don't misconstrue. I wouldn't.
No, you also, like, do you ever get personally accused of being anti-police?
Oh, I thought, okay.
I certainly don't think that, but I'm just
Oh. What I was gonna say is, I don't think that's. I mean, it's not that simple for me that I'm like, okay, anti-police. But I don't think that it's a full misunderstanding. Like, if somebody were to wonder that about the work, we're in a racist place. Like, our country's roots are racist roots and violent roots, and, like, rooted in genocide, and these police systems and systems made to, like, a bit, like, they are historically, like, they are rooted in this racial violence, and people are carrying guns. And so I wouldn't say, like, oh, like, all cops are bad. Like, I wouldn't say that, but I'm this is not a system that works. This is a broken system, but people's lives you don't get that life back. And so I don't know if that answers your question. Does it? I wouldn't be offended. Yeah. Anyways, I'm interested in the conversation about.
Personally, I don't think anti-police. I'd like to say it's a painful story that needs to be told. I'm just worried about maybe other people that don't relate to, especially young Black men experiencing with police. They might misconstrue some of what the literature is as being anti-police. That's what I'm really trying to address.
Yeah. I feel like there's something I'm gonna think about. I feel like there's something on the tip of my something that I want to say, but I haven't reached it yet.
So I just had a question regarding any advice, or, like, if you could give other writers in the room, like, a piece of strong advice as far as their career goes with that.
I'm really bad at advice because I don't know you. I don't know everybody. But and even then, my sister would say, "You know me, and you're bad at advice." I think it's good to wonder about advice, like, like, um, what I would, I mean, this moment, that thing of like, using, trying to keep track of your motor, you're like trying to hold that. I think like we all have these ways of seeing, being, moving through the world. Like each of us, there's nobody else who carries what you carry. There's nobody else who carries what you carry. There's nobody. And I think I was saying this earlier, James Baldwin has the essay on why I stopped hating Shakespeare and how he had just thought like just to imitate only. Like and it took him a while to realize like, oh, I've got all of these languages and like this is my voice. Like the difference between imitating somebody else's voice and like figuring a way to grow and nourish your own. And I feel like it's really hard to keep track of that, and it's hard to keep track of like the thing that got you here, like to be sitting, breathing, moving through this space, like, and I feel like keeping hold of all your languages and all the things you knew by heart when you were 3, when you're 10, when you're, like, I think, not here, of course, I mean, I don't know, but I think that can be rooted out of us. Like, what? That's weird, or I don't get it, or which, I think it's important to hear people's feedback and their ideas about what they're hearing and seeing, and also to just keep your imagination and your voice to feed it, to grow it, to hold strong, because I think there's a lot that wants to like dismantle that or streamline our voices. And difference is beautiful, powerful, important, critical. Yeah, thank you. I'm talking so much, and
Renee decided it was going to be deep, so I'll try to not make this question sucky. I want to thank you very much for your reading and being here. And maybe I can connect to the last bit of your answer when you were talking about imitating other voices or sort of being influenced and trying to find your own voice. When you mentioned you were reading Paul Celan a lot lately, that really lit a light bulb for me because I kept hearing echoes of Totus View in Black Maria. And I wonder if that was deliberate, the Black Milk of Morning, the repetition in that poem, Totus View, which is amazing. And so if that was a conscious echo or repetition, I'd love to hear you say that. And then maybe, as you're saying, you're reading it in translation, it's coming from this other tradition. And I just heard on the radio briefly before coming here, and this is not a slam on our millennial generation here. All you guys know what Auschwitz is and the Holocaust is. But I heard that they just did a survey, and at least 25% of millennials didn't know what Auschwitz was, and even a smaller percent had heard of the Holocaust. So again, echoing Celan or responding to Celan, do you feel like you're also continuing to bring that awareness to these severe acts of violence that characterize our times?
I don't think I was consciously pulling from Totus View or now that I don't think that I was consciously doing that. But of course, I mean, I read, and things you carry knowingly and knowing and not knowing. I don't know. There's a moment, I have a quote of his atop one of the poems, and I think that I'm really interested in the ways that we mark the people we're reading and family member, like where we get our languages, and like every chance I can get, like this book is full of notes and in the back on top of poems, and I feel like that's a kind of like I don't know, I hope for it to be a kind of sharing and like a way of paying homage that this is written in community with people who I know and don't know. And so if something speaks to somebody, like the quote of Ceylon's, I'm like, oh, maybe somebody, but it's really like like paying homage. But I was gonna say one last thing, which is June Jordan is so strong. She's one of the people I carry so much in that book, and that's the quote that starts the book. And she's kind of like sprinkled throughout in a way that I'm aware of. But I don't know that I'm wondering about like Passover at the end, and like consequences of our violences in the ways that stories are told. But I honestly wouldn't say that I'm like, trying to ask people to think of the Holocaust to show us specifically, or like but hope that if a name carries somebody who might not have found it might go out to find Ceylon or June Jordan. Thank you.
One last round of applause, please.
Thank you.